Hello friends and welcome to the Patron show / Q&A for May 2019. How are you doing? This month has felt like a weird one. I'm not quite sure. It feels like a transitional month. I think it's because I posted the Telltale stuff so early in the month that it feels like this month has gone on forever. Or like not much has happened in it or something. It's also been like one of the weirdest months in terms of workload because I was incredibly busy for the first 2 weeks, coming off of an incredibly busy 4 weeks prior to that. And I've not been busy for the past 2 weeks, mostly because my parents arrived from Ireland. So I've been entertaining them. I've been working here and there. A lot of the work that I've been doing has been like a kind of new branding for Noclip, thinking up our new tiers, thinking about like emailing people about animation work and music and all of this sort of stuff. I'm basically like just planning a sort of a refresh, brand refresh, channel refresh thing with like a very much like, here's the past 3 years what we've been trying to learn and then this is what the future is. So it's been a lot of like stuff I can do on my laptop and not down here editing, and stuff I can do in like while my baby's asleep for an hour or while my parents are chilling out in the backyard or whatever. And then also we just came back from a big road trip. I had a buddy of mine, Martin Gaston, who if you watched my stuff when I worked for GameSpot UK, he was my old flatmate there. He was reviews editor for Video Gamer, which was in South London. And then, but he's like one of my dearest friends. He got married up in Cape Cod to his wife's American. They live in London. But also Matt Lees was there, who you might know, because Matt used to work with him at Video Gamer, and I know Matt as well, going back years from my time in the UK as well. If you don't know Matt, he runs Shut Up and Sit Down, which is incredibly popular, crowdfunded, pre-Patreon board game like review site, and also he has been incredibly popular in his own right on his own YouTube stuff. So that was cool. So I was like hanging out in Cape Cod with my daughter, my parents from Ireland, and Matt Lees. So it was kind of a weird weekend. We also went to New York, which was fun. We just got back yesterday and we're all just shattered because traveling with a 10-month-old now it's like we tried to not travel because we need to get used to having to do that shit with her, and she needs to get used to it too. And that was her 7th flight she took. We took the train from here to New York, and then from New York to Cape Cod, and then we flew down from Providence into BWI, which is like 30 minutes from where we live here. But we're just like very tired. So if I feel tired or look tired, it's because I'm quite tired. And when my parents go on Thursday, I've got basically like kind of 7 solid days of work ahead of me, Friday through the next Friday, while I'm working on predominantly Hades, the edit for episode 3, and also a lot of just planning. And then Saturday, it's E3, baby. Like, we're flying on Saturday, and I'm there Saturday to Saturday. We're there for 7 days, filming absolutely everything, and then figuring out, well, not figuring out what it is. I know what it is, but like figuring out what it turned into, the bigger version that it turned into while we were there. So I'm looking forward to that one. But anyway, enough of that for now. I'm sitting down, I'm chill. I have my drink of Diet Coke here. I have a baby monitor with my kid who's still asleep. And I have there's a really good set of questions. This might be the best set of questions we've had in a while. Not that they're not always wonderful, but I'm really looking forward to these ones. I'm so calm sounding. I don't know. I think I'm just so happy to be back doing Patreon work. I looked at the Patreon and the last thing I posted was March 17th. I never go that long without posting something. Yeah. So I don't know. I think I'm just fucking zen. Let's answer some questions. First question comes in from Babo the Breakalier. Asks, you've done 2 of your hardest docs in the past months. The first Astroneer and now Telltale. Does making docs like this influence you personally, and how do you handle it? Yeah, they were hard. They were both docs for different reasons that I was happy I didn't fuck up, or I was happy they were done. I'm proud of both of them. And they've done really well. They've done way better than I thought. Everything we do now does like quite a good amount regardless, just because of our embedded subscriber base and our searchability and all that sort of stuff. But the Astroneer one's done like 300,000, I think, and the Telltale one's creeping up on 140 at the moment or something like that. Not that we played that numbers game, but the reception's been really good. Most importantly, the comments, the emails from people saying thank you or tweets and all that sort of stuff, which is, I think, is a good judgment. When people go out of their way to reach out like that, I think you can kind of tell you did a good job. But it does suck. It does suck. The Astroneer doc, I was like in tears editing parts of that. The end, the bit where the reveal kind of happens, and also the end part. And when it went up and I said it live, I had a little bit of a weepy then as well. That was a hard one. I have personal, I won't say trauma, but experience that sort of aligns with what happened to their friend. So in a way it was kind of personal to me as well. Or it was my way of telling a story. I was telling a story of one of my friends, but it wasn't one of my friends. It was, it was like a proxy or something. So that was certainly the case. And then the Telltale one was difficult for a bunch of other reasons. I think it was tough just because there's so many ways you can tell that story the wrong way, or in an exploitative way, or miss the opportunity you have, like use the wrong ingredients in the wrong way, or like put them in the wrong order, and then suddenly it's doing things bad is one thing, but not doing them as good as you could have done them is as much of a fear. And I think it is for editors especially, because you can kind of just keep editing forever and keep making it better. And there's definitely like a law of diminishing marginal returns on that, but like it's difficult to step away from it. But also I've gotten way more disciplined about how much time I'm spending on stuff. Like we've put together more stuff since 6 months ago, let's say, since December. Our productivity is like 3 times what it was this time last year. And a decent amount of that is me, it's not just me, is my use of my editing time. So yeah, but I will, like, to be honest, when both of those were done, I was just fucking relieved. I was really relieved. Also, the Telltale one, I've not talked about this. I sent it to all the people involved. I sent it to the 4, to Caroline, Paul, let's see if I can remember everyone's name now when it's this far away from it. From Emily, Caroline, Paul, and Kent, and of course Scott Butterworth, who I was working with on it production-wise for a while. I sent it to them. I said to Scott a week early, and he gave me some feedback on it, and then I sent it to the 4 of them like the day before, I think, and I got emails back from 3 of the 4 saying good job. And I don't know if the other one, I think they all liked it, or at least they didn't have anything negative to say. So that was important to me, to make sure I didn't put words in anyone's mouth, that kind of thing. Kind of tried to be very deliberate about when I was talking and what I was saying, and then also I tried to not say anything too loud to kind of shout over them. But yeah, it is hard, and I think the next few months' stocks are going to be way more cheery and fun, and more like our sort of general retrospectives, not our kind of the reporting angle that sort of the Telltale one was. Yeah. Next question. Good question. Next question. Voya Vidovchenko asks, hey Danny, you're probably very busy filming and editing, but did you have an opportunity to play some games in the meantime? What were those games? What did you like about them? I really liked Rage 2. It's not a great game. I don't know, I hate saying that even, because it's almost like I'm qualifying the fact that I like that game. I really like the shooting in that game. The story, I could take or leave. It's sure. I kind of like Far Cry. Don't really care. Skip the cutscenes. Let's keep going. The world that it builds and the characters and all that sort of stuff, I think it's really good. It does feel a little bit like a missed opportunity that could have been more done with it. But also, I'm okay with that. I've got a kid. I work a lot of hours of the day. At the end of the day, all I really wanted was a game where the shooting was fun and there was a big checklist full of stuff that I could do. in like 10-minute bursts. And that game had that in spades. So I enjoyed it. And the boss fights I wasn't into. I've completed the game's story. I'd say I've done like 70% of the map stuff, and I thought I'd jump back in and play the rest of it, but that's kind of not happening. So I don't know. Check back with me in a month and see if I've jumped back. I might never play it again, but I enjoyed it. I also think I have an extra code for that somewhere, because I bought it for myself, and then remember they did the weird like mutant head special edition thing. I ordered that when they announced it at E3, I think last year. I was like Rage. I like the first Rage. I have a history with the first Rage, and I thought, oh sure, I'll do that. But in the meantime, they'd sent me a code, Bethesda's PR, I guess. So I think I have that. So I might put it in the comments or something on this video if I have that extra code. So you can go play Rage as well if you're one of the first people to watch this. Maybe it'll be on screen right now. There it is. Awesome. Enjoy Rage. I think there's another code for a special extra thing. I'm not really sure. If I did here, that's on screen too. Enjoy Rage. What else did I play? I've been playing Empire, what's it called? Total War 3 Kingdoms? Total War 3 Kingdoms. I've been playing that as well. I've been trying to get into that. I've never really gotten into that. Maybe it's a bit of homework. I don't know. What do you think? Should it be? Should it be a piece of homework? And then what else have I been playing? Oh, I got my wheel set up again. I moved the camera, but then I'd have to re-rack everything, and fuck that. It's probably already out of focus again. Look, I gotta make sure my pearly yellows are. Teeth are a good thing to do your focus against. There we go. I got my wheel set up over there. And the other thing that happened is that I've been on the lookout for a Rock Band pair of drums for probably a year, but they're so expensive on eBay. So I've been watching eBay for like a year for a pair of drums to not cost like $200. And I saw one that went up that was pretty cheap and had pretty reasonable, if not slow, shipping. And I actually got it. So I also have that. So I've been playing Rock Band, which one is it? Rock Band 4, I think? Yeah, Rock Band 4. And that's really cool. And I've been buying songs and having a good time with that. And both those games, so now I just have, it's either wheel or drum, and I'm swapping them in and out. So I've been playing a bunch of that as well. And then the one I'm going to play a lot of is Void Bastards, is out tomorrow as of this recording. And I've been looking forward to playing that forever. So I'm looking to check that out as well. I still haven't got back into Sekiro. I need to be in the right frame of mind. I think summertime, once we're on the other side of E3, is when I'm going to jump back into that. Next question from Con Tiki asks, I know it isn't exactly the normal purview of Noclip, but have you considered doing a doc on Discord? They're part of many PC gamers' lives. I'd love to know more about them. It has actually crossed my mind. Steve Lynn, who may actually be watching this, he supports Noclip, I know is involved in that organization. Maybe I should hit him up. But I actually have been interested in maybe talking to them. There's a couple of those types of companies, like Twitch is another one. Both of them are based in San Francisco. There's a couple of those that I am interested in doing something on. I'm not sure what the angle is necessarily, and I'm also not sure how to do that stuff in an interesting way that isn't just advertorial. I feel like Twitch would be easier because you could just embed. Discord might be the type of thing where you kind of get in contact with them and then figure out if they have any stories happening in their community. Like that's what happened with us with Rockstar. We're trying to do some with Rockstar and kind of like maybe not happening because they're deep in dev on this thing. But have you heard about this GTA Online clan? I got told about them, went and did it. So yeah, totally good suggestion, and it makes me even more likely to follow that one up. So thank you. Elliot Binum asks, what are 2 or your 3 biggest lessons since starting Noclip? Perhaps regarding strategies on finding an audience, finding interesting devs that will work with you, honing documentary formats, and what would fit each project. Just curious to know more about what you've gone through. I think one of the things that I've learned, this is a really difficult question because I feel like I've learned a lot, but I feel like I actually have, it's made more questions appear than it has answered them, or maybe the ones that I've answered are I've shelved in the back of my mind as not things I worry about anymore. But I think one of the main things that I've learned is to trust the audience, is to kind of do things that I want to do and not worry too much about expectation. The projects that have done, that have been the most successful in terms of views, perhaps, have tended to be the ones that I've been really personally invested in. That's not to say that I wouldn't do things that... I'm still glad I didn't do all those, because in doing other ones I have learned things that I would not have learned had I not done those. So it's hard, because as a creative person stuck in a kind of a bubble like I am a bit, like I don't work with a big team, it's really important for me to be creatively satisfied, and then that's how the sort of the most delicious fruits perhaps are made that way, and people enjoy those. But then, and maybe the most satisfying for me in a way, but then to sort of fill the basket up, you need variety. So that's why we've gone off in so many different directions over the past 3 years. But what I will say is that the biggest sort of the change at year 3 is kind of having a more established vision of what we are, of what Noclip is, of what our patrons are, of what our mission is, of the things that patrons get, of the things that the YouTube channel gets, of building a community, not just here on Patreon, but outside of that as well. That's the big thing, and that kind of has come from all the good lessons learned and the bad lessons learned along the way. But yeah, I don't know, edit faster is another one. Trust people earlier. Trust other people to do the work earlier. Like, don't wait 2 years to get Jeremy to do a doc, because he fucking nailed it. Dream Daddy is one of the best things we've done. Yeah, stuff like that. If the channel would look different if we had infinite money. We have a lot of funding, and it's really good, and it's helped us a lot. But we're at our limit. Like, if we had more, it would be different. So maybe one of the things I would learn would be to fundraise better or something, so we get more, because we're pretty that way. But then also I like that. I don't want to earn more. I like stability. I'm such a fucking contrarian when it comes to this stuff, that like for every problem I see an opportunity, and for every opportunity I see a problem. So I don't know. Ask me again in 2 years. Eddie Stubbington. These names this week are just fantastic. I wondered if you were planning on doing anything with platform holders / first-party studios, maybe talking about the transition between generations or new game streaming platforms. Could be an interesting look into a side of the industry that isn't really shown anywhere. Yeah, we've been asked a lot about whether or not we talk to platform holders. First-party studios, I think the closest we got to something like that was Sony Worldwide Studios, where we did the doc on Horizon through Guerrilla. I will be honest, I feel a little bit, there are like EA, Activision, and then any first party Sony or Microsoft stuff, and Nintendo actually, we've never really looked into. And I think a large part of that was sort of the perception issue that arises there. I mean, Bethesda, Guerrilla is way more, I feel like, part of establishment, big multinational corporate video game land than Bethesda is, which is a private company still. But that's the sort of thing you start to drift into, is at what stage are you, if the story is interesting and there, and we could do something that we were obviously as in control of as we always are, then I'll be into it. But I don't know, or the right game, like Spider-Man would have been a cool one, right? Or God of War if they weren't doing their own thing. So I guess it's, I don't have anything against doing it necessarily. It definitely doesn't shine as bright in the distance for me as some other lights do, but I'm not like totally against doing it in any sort of way. Like with the Bethesda stuff, I like the challenge of having to, really do the work to make sure that something like that comes across as authentic and does right by the audience. I'd love to hear some examples. Do you have any off the top of your head that you're kind of thinking of? Put them in the comments. Landon Robinson. I didn't realize GameSpot UK was in London. I'm there on vacation with my family now. Oh, cool. It's lovely, but definitely expensive, just looking at the real estate. What is your favorite and least favorite place you've lived? Also, you mentioned in a previous video that you might consider going back west, or at least leaving Maryland. Anywhere in particular interests you for a new Noclip headquarters? Yeah, London is an expensive place to live. It's also a lovely place to live. It's kind of the allure of cities, right? And the problem with them as well being that you can't sort of it's easy enough, or not easier enough, but easier certainly for a young person with not that much stuff to subside in a city earning not that much money, as I certainly did when I was living in London. Let me tell you, I was paycheck to paycheck. I was fucking destitute a couple of times. But the reality of doing that is a lot different once you've got, you know, kids and you live in a country that doesn't have free healthcare or college and stuff like that. So it definitely changes things. I've kind of loved everywhere I've lived. I've lived in my hometown Waterford. I lived in Cork in the southwest of Ireland. I lived in a number of places in London over 5 years, north and south of the river. I lived in San Francisco. I moved to Oakland, and now I'm here in Maryland. And they've all had a different thing to them, for sure. Like, San Francisco is the most beautiful place I've ever lived in my life. I hate the poverty levels there. It's incredibly expensive, obviously. Oakland I like more because it was more sort of legit and had its own culture and its own communities. I disliked the gentrification there, but I loved practically everything else about it. London, expensive, but such a crazy melting pot of food and cultures and influence, and always something to do, and just the type of place you can go wandering any day and bump into some cool random shit and hop on a random bus and go somewhere and have fun. Also love playing soccer there with my team, the Star of Bethnal Green. Cork is a cool town. Definitely a year was enough for me there, and I love my hometown as well. So I don't know, I like moving, I like changing it up. It's kind of an important part of my psyche, I think, is to mix things up. As we try and like open up the next chapter of our life, which is like figuring out where we're staying. That's definitely a scary part of it for me, is trying to put down roots somewhere, because I'm kind of transient by nature. But yeah, and you mentioned, like, you know, we've been thinking about moving and what that would mean for us. I'll probably have some news on that over the next couple of months. We're coming up on our 2-year lease here in October, so there's a couple of things going on. You know, consider staying around here for sure. There's a lot of options here, DC and Baltimore. When I was out in Austin, you might remember, for the Half-Life stuff, I was looking around there. I was looking at houses. I was kind of just figuring out the lay of the land. When I was back for GDC, I was looking in my old neighborhood in Oakland again, talking to Jeremy to see if he was going to stick around there. Talking to some people I know out there who have office space, and just kind of trying to feel it all out. And it's definitely all still in motion. I definitely have more of an idea of what I'm doing than I'm letting on, but that's just kind of, there's so much going on that I need to like keep that a little bit close to my chest for the moment. Especially as like over the past 4 or 5 months, stuff has shifted quite a lot. Actually, we were definitely doing this and definitely doing that, and then it's all changed. What I will say is, the plates I'm spinning involve making sure that me and my wife and my kid, who is still asleep, have like room to grow in 5 years. That like this is a place that we can be in and want to be in for all this time. And then the other side of that is making sure this is a place that Noclip can grow in, and that Noclip can be the best version of itself. And I thought that might be somewhere really cheap when I first moved here. And it certainly helped my mental health a lot, and I've learned a lot from that. And, you know, we live in a nice house, and I was able to write off 1/3 of the rent based on the amount of square footage for this office. But there was definitely drawbacks in other ways. Mental health wise, I don't have much of a social circle here. In terms of collaborators, I mean, poor Esteban had to drive like, 2 hours from Philadelphia to come down here and work. There isn't a big network of people. I mean, there are really talented people who live around here. I wish I'd hung out with more of them around, but like it's not the same as you get in like big video focused cities like Los Angeles or Phoenix or Austin or, you know, San Francisco, Oakland, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it has its drawbacks too, definitely. And the space for the rent is definitely a big plus, but it's not the only positive, especially as my dynamic with work and life has sort of evolved as well. So watch this space, I'll say that. Amir Rangenkar asks, after the release of Raising Kratos, I was wondering what you thought of the doc as a fellow video game documentary creative. Were there any specific things you took inspiration from, or any aspects you could tell they might have had to compromise on from their original vision? Yeah, if you haven't watched it already, it's the in-house produced God of War documentary. So I knew about this ahead of time because I know a bunch of the Sony people from doing the Guerrilla stuff, and obviously we had interviewed Corey for the Half-Life thing. So it was part of a conversation at one stage that we might do something on God of War, and I knew they had all that footage, and I'm not sure if they knew what they were going to do with it yet. So when it came out, I was really happy because it was the type of project that I think, if we had tried to do something, I don't know if that was the case. I don't know if there was always someone working on it forever up until like it was always going to be made, or how they were going to release it. Maybe that was the issue, or they didn't want to double up, or maybe there was a different angle or something like that. But it was definitely like, leaps and bounds beyond the scope of anything we've ever done, being embedded in the studio over that long. I thought the openness in it was really cool. All the stuff about Shuei and like just the conflicts and stuff like that were cool. I wasn't super crazy about the meal time thing that they did, where they were all sort of sitting around the table and sort of talking about it wistfully. I'm not sure if that added or took away from the feeling of drama around it. And I also don't necessarily think that it telegraphed where it was going or where the stress points were going to be for the project. I think it was just kind of more of this is what happened. It didn't like build up any tension to any one point necessarily, although the E3 stuff, every time it got to the E3 stuff, it got that, because it was like, here we go, boom, here we go, boom. But you never felt like the release of the game, I don't know, like the stress of I don't think the financial stress of it really came across necessarily, or maybe it would have more if they'd gotten rid of that stuff. And it was kind of like saying everything's okay in the end, obviously, because here they are talking about it. But that's a structural thing that they probably needed in some way as well. But I hate leading with the criticism, because it was incredibly well done, really beautifully shot, so much variety in terms of the footage that they had, so much variety in terms of the people they were talking to. Really inspirational stuff. I loved watching it. I'm going to watch it again. And it certainly helps in relation to the way in which we produce stuff like the Hades doc, for instance. But the big difference between us and them, obviously, is that this was something that I believe was either produced internally I imagine it was produced internally and then subsequently was paid for by Sony. So you can have a crew working on stuff. We are so light. We have such a small footprint in terms of our finances for this sort of stuff. Jeremy is in with Supergiant the absolute minimum we need him to do to pull that shit off, because it's really expensive. Like paying someone to go in to film somewhere for a day costs a lot of money when you add up all those days, and then color correct, and then it's costly for me to spend X amount of weeks editing that stuff. I'm really happy with our Hades stuff. I wouldn't change it for the world. I absolutely love it. But doing it to the level that they were able to do, it's opened up sort of this recurring question that I keep having, which is, how do we do that stuff? Like, can we do that stuff crowdfunded in a way that's ethical? Like, do you get people to fund the doc as the game's getting announced? Like, that seems super shitty. We've said about not doing commercial work. We've never done any commercial work, not even on the side. I mean, Esteban did commercial work while he was working for us, but never on the same companies. He did work for Capcom and stuff like that, but that was his thing. It was nothing to do with me. Jeremy doesn't do any commercial game work. I don't think he ever has since he left GameSpot. I don't even think he did before that or any time. I think maybe he did one thing for GameSpot. I think GameSpot might have hired him once or twice. I think he did some footage on one of their history of, I think it was Mafia or something. So like, if we did commercial work, could we pay for bigger productions? Thought I heard the baby awake, but I didn't. Or is it not that? Is it setting up a production house wing that we get funding, like use the old game studio model? And I've been looking at a lot of like other, not Raising Kratos is kind of like, it's a free doc that got put up. Like the filmmaker who lived beside Ubisoft and did the one on what's it called, For Honor, did that one. Like, clearly there was buy-in from Ubisoft on that in some way, right? To get him the access to, like, did they part fund it maybe from a media fund? So I've been trying to think about that in relation to the big move stuff, kind of, that's the big shift stuff that's coming. I'm saying too much. As well, like to try and see what way we could do that shit. Because I want to make shit like that, of course. I want to make shit like that about games while they're in production and work on a thing for 5 years in secret and then put it out. We were putting out feelers for that stuff, and we've been I cannot tell you how many times we've been asked to be paid to do it, and asked to not be paid to do it, and we haven't been able to afford to do it because it's too big a project, or I haven't been able to commit to it. The Hades stuff worked out because I knew the time frame, like nobody else does, but I know the time frame of how long we're working on it, how much I budgeted it. I was able to, based on our patronage, I was able to say, hey, you know what? This is kind of where we're at, and I can siphon off this much of the budget every month to that, we'll be fine. And even if we dip 5% or whatever, we'll still be okay, you know. But a project over years is a whole other kettle of ballparks, as my friend Dennis used to say. So yeah, I don't know. I've learned a lot from that, but it's also opened a bunch more questions for me. But in terms of production, I think one of the things is just having different variety of shots. Most of our stuff is locked off interviews, and then we do B-roll. Again, this is a budgetary thing. We're only in there for a certain amount of time. We don't really have the allowance to do that sort of stuff. But I think getting more, you know, shots from steady cams and things like that. Jeremy's camera's not really set up to do that stuff very much. He did it for the Patron trailer, but it's a bit of a fucking nightmare because he's got an external recorder on it and all this sort of shit. So I have one for this DSLR, and I'm going to be filming on it during E3 a bunch. So we're trying to figure that out with audio and how to make that sort of stuff work with the small crew and tight production windows that we operate in to keep our stuff so low budget. So yeah, that's one. It's pushed me in that direction again, just to create a better visual presentation for what we do. Shell Comics asks, hey Danny, don't know if you've covered this already, but do you have a rough plan for the next set of Hades videos, or do you work with what you have? Yes, so the plan for episode 3 was to focus on the art and the music. So Jeremy was embedded with Gen Z and Darren Korb. He was with Jen for a couple of days, interviewed Jen, interviewed some of the people who work with Jen. He was with Darren for a couple of days. He was at his house while he was recording a song and playing drums and playing guitar and singing and doing all this stuff, and we did interviews. I'm basically like midway through editing that one at the moment. So the plan, we're gonna unveil the actual sort of plan. I can't say too much about the plan because we know their plan in terms of development more than the public does. So we've aligned stuff to do that. So the two things I will say is that episode, I'm really desperately trying to get it out before E3. I may not. There's 3 things that might happen. I'll get it out, I won't get it out, or I'll split it in 2. I'm half thinking about making one of them be about Jen and art and one of them be about Darren and music, because the 2 stories don't intertwine nearly as much as I thought they might. So it could, and we throw so much on the cutting room floor that I'm kind of like, oh, why am I doing this? Like, let's just make them 2 separate videos. So I'll know more by Friday. I'll have an idea on that when I jump back into the edit proper. So that's that. And then the other thing I will kind of let patrons know about ahead of time is that Supergiant are turning a decade old in, I think it's like September maybe. And we've had a lot of people asking about doing just a classic Noclip style doc on their older games. So, you know, I'm a massive Transistor fan. If you see the big Transistor poster in the background of all these shots, Bastion is one of the most loved games they've ever made, and Pyre is such an interesting design, concept and execution. I love that game. And we've kind of covered the history of the studio in a weird way, but we, you know, in the intro, but we didn't really dive into the, you know, design of any of those games in any sort of meaningful way, except the sort of basic stuff we did in the first episode. So what I kind of think might happen is we'll have a couple of episodes over the summer, and then we'll do a bunch of kind of more traditional Noclip cool deep dives into their back catalogue at some stage in Q3, and then hop back on the developing hill train until it reaches its destination, whenever that is. Yes, but seriously though asks, when did you first realize there are too many damn games being released and there's not enough hours on Earth to try them all? I think it was when I was in college, or maybe when I got out of college and went into the working world. Actually, no, that's a lie, because all I did was play games in my spare time then as well. I don't know. When I was at GameSpot then I was just playing games all the time. It might have been when I started Noclip, because then I had to really know a game really well. Like I couldn't, at GameSpot you could make an op-ed on a game you played for 2 days. as long as it was early enough and you weren't going too deep on it. Whereas you're making like, hour-long features about these games, you first of all have to record a lot of gameplay, and second of all, when you're interviewing, Sam Jones or Mary O'Reilly about the music sound on this one gun, or the sound on this one gun, or the art direction of this one character, like you really need to play these games quite a lot. And that's when I started to like dive into specific games, which I've enjoyed as well. I definitely felt guilty about, and it stopped me from doing a lot of like op-ed style stuff or podcast style stuff, because I just don't have the broad view anymore. Like playing the Total War stuff at the moment is like really fun. I'd never be able to do that when I worked at GameSpot. But yeah, I mean, there are too many damn games, but there are also less games coming out, I feel like, now than there were. I mean, real games, not like Steam bucket shit. Steam bucket of shit. SteamBucketOfShit.com. Steam Bucket of Shit from Noclip, our new show. It's not like the halcyon days of Xbox and PlayStation, as you can see behind me, where there were, 1,000,001 different character action games coming out every week. But it's certainly close to it. Like games like, remember like Dennis would play, me and my buddy Dennis would play like Viking, Battle for Asgard, and The Club. They're like, and Red Faction and Just Cause, all these games that came out like all around the same time. Stranglehold, like The Darkness. There was just so many games, so many weird ass games, and definitely indie games have like filled that void a little bit, but they seem to be shorter, or they're roguelikes, so you don't feel like you haven't completed them by the time you've poured 20 hours into them. Different times, but yeah, there are too many games. And having kids can be beneficial in one way. You can play Bloodborne non-stop for 2 months, but it's a bit harder to sit down and really concentrate on something when you're watching a baby monitor. Although I'm managing to do a Patron Q&A while I'm doing it, so it can't be that bad. And the final question, of course, from Tohir Ateliev. Since everyone and their grandmother are making comment pieces on the final episodes of The Game of Thrones, if you watched the show, what's your take on the final season? I did watch the show. I watched the show from start to finish. I have friends who have appeared in episodes because it's set in Northern Ireland, and I used to work in sort of the theatre world there in the south. And I'm really proud of Northern Ireland for that show, and I've been following it for years and years and years. And I really loved the final season. It was fucking great. It was brilliant. I don't know. I guess we all view media through our own lenses. I think people who are critics and YouTube commenters and writers, or maybe not YouTube commenters so much, but like writers and stuff, are often reading things through their literary or story, character, narrative lenses. It's not that I don't care about characters. Obviously, you can't love film without loving characters, but I think I put a very strong onus on production, be it, composition or lighting or camera movements, stuff like that, pacing. And I thought it was, like, in many ways, it was the best season for that. It was, every episode had its own really strong identity in terms of they were kind of their own little mini movies, and you could tell where the different directorial influences were coming from as well. Like the last one was straight up like old school, season 1 through 3 people just talking at each other. 5 was just this like, volcano of story arcs coming together and exploding and smashing off each other. I loved episode 3. I loved how dark it was. I think I was 3, right? I thought that was super clever. I think the problem was that some people were getting low bit rate through AWS, and they were getting artifacting on that stuff. So I think that'll be a really interesting one to rewatch on 4K Blu-ray if people get a chance. So that's a real shame, but I loved that it was shot that way. I'm a big fan of that type of intentionality when it comes to lighting. And I love when people do brave shit, and like what's braver, or like if you can't do it in like the final season of a show that's got all that funding and all those eyes, then that's the time to do that shit. So yeah, I loved it. Like, are there things that I wish were different? Sure. my experience of playing Game of Thrones or watching Game of Thrones is that things that I wish were different happen all the time, like when my favorite characters get killed. You know, could you have had, you know, nicer finales for certain characters? Like, totally. Like, there are, I won't get into spoilers, but there are a certain amount of them that I was like, oh, that sucks, that's how they die. Like, that's absolutely sucks. But then I felt that way about a lot of characters as well in the past. And what I've actually started to do since then is I rewatched season 1 of Game of Thrones over the past week while I was traveling, just at nighttime and on the train or whatever. And there's so many amazing references to what happened at the end that feel full circle in a kind of a cool way. And those early seasons do feel different, but that's okay. I think people, when they're making their art, they evolve, and maybe not always in the way you want them to. And sometimes that can be really disappointing. I worry about that with myself sometimes, that I've evolved in ways that people, you know, who followed like The Point maybe, or some of my other stuff, you know, or even the early docs, and they feel different in tone to how they feel now, maybe more serious in a way. You know, it's definitely part of it is trying to be aware, I guess, even if you're not in control of it, because I feel like to control that artistic constraint might actually just end up in a worse thing anyway, in all manners. But for what it was worth, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. That was a really cool show. I'm glad it existed and we all got to watch it. All right, and that's a Patron show that's a Patron show / Q&A for May 2019. Excuse me. June's going to be a fun one. We have a bunch of stuff going on this summer. I'm nervous because of what happened in January. About the January thing, by the way, I am back on the blower with them about maybe cramming in during the summer as well. We have one guest big doc retrospective thing people have been asking me to do, or us to do, with a person you probably know, and a series that I've probably talked about at some stage, that's in the UK that we will be diving into during the summertime. We're doing the E3 doc, which is going to be a lot of fun, which is going to be all about kind of how the press covers it and what E3 is this year and what it's like attending as a person. We've had some new shit appear there, new opportunities we didn't have. We've had other ones fall apart. So that whole thing is kind of in flux. It's going to be weird. We're going to shoot it. Like the weird stuff that we shot in the Half-Life doc, like the Mendocino stuff, it's going to be a lot of that stuff. It's going to be like very experimental. Like weird, way more, less VO, way more filming me talking to camera, interviewing people on the fly. We've also got our own press stuff, like we're gonna go see Cyberpunk, and we have a couple of other ones that we might actually just do sit down interviews, like plain ass Noclip interviews, and cram them in there. Like it's going to be weird, and like almost all the big sites that you care about probably, or small journalists or whatever, were at some stage checking in on or embedding with or doing something. So it's a really fun project. And then we've got some other longer retrospective stuff for later in the year. This year is definitely like, if I can say what I think Noclip will look like by the time the end of the year, or what the slate will look like between now and then, is a lot of retrospective stuff, kind of like we did in the past with Rocket League and Doom, Final Fantasy, and those kind of like big ones. We're going to be spitting out those GDC videos right up until December. We've got more coming. I'm working on the Dwarf Fortress one at the moment. I kind of maybe want to do a full doc on Dwarf Fortress. That interview was so good, and Taran was such an interesting person, that I think we might try and maybe reach out about that or see if they're interested. And then, October, whatever happens, it's going to be big. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I'm going to be doing a big funding drive and also doing more scheduled stuff. The podcast we've got big plans for the podcast. That's why it's been quiet at the moment, because we've got real big plans for it, but I've also got some just interviews coming up on that in the next couple of weeks. Or in June at least. We're recording soon enough. So there's a lot going on, and like talking to animators about doing like fun shit with the Noclip logo and changing the graphics on the YouTube channel. You may have seen the Patron, some of the new graphics have come in. There's a lot of stuff like that kind of coming down to kind of refresh, and a whole new tiers for Patreon, like new launch videos, all that sort of stuff. More Jeremy, hopefully. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I think this is almost coming up on an hour. We're almost 50 minutes, and my voice is going because I haven't been talking to camera very often. I think I've been in focus this entire time. I don't even know. And most importantly, my kid is still asleep. Thank you so much for your support as ever. Couldn't do it without you. It's been a really cool month. I've gotten so much of my head together, and I have a sharper idea of what we're doing, especially in relation to what I was saying about doing all the premium stuff. Like, that's kind of basically all gone now, but the idea of making better quality community stuff is still there. I've realized that the patrons, you folks, you are here to breathe, like, I don't know, fire into my belly, and you kind of don't care where I spit it, in a way. And I've been worried so much about doing community stuff that is for more people outside of Patreon, because I feel like it's turning my back on my patrons. So the new tiers are effectively going to be a way of having, like, I would say 100%, 110% of what we currently have, so actually more for patrons, but that some of the stuff that we do, like, instead of doing the patron show be a big thing that I was putting a bunch of time editing into, doing them more like this, like the Q&A style, but then having a community show, but then also highlights patron shit in it, but then everyone's involved. So, like, would it be cool, would you care more if these questions were asked on a thing that went out to 400,000 people, maybe, or one that went out to 4,000? Like, do you care as long as I answer them? All that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking at the moment. And finding that right balance of not flooding the channel, which I've actually realized we can definitely, I've also been talking to YouTube a lot. I have a new partner, a manager over there who I've been talking to almost every week for the past month, which has been pretty cool. We have a big meeting next week about business stuff, about the future of the business, not about doing business with them. And it's been really eye-opening to be like, oh, actually, we can totally, like, open the tap up an extra 50% on everything we do. Like, people would love it. And we get more subs and everything does great and all that sort of shit. So it's cool. I feel like I'm sitting on a rocket and we've been kind of I'm on third. I have so many metaphors. Irish people, man. I'm in like third gear, and like there are times when Warframe and I put it down to second gear, or times when like The Witcher we put it up to like fourth. Well, the camera battery died, so hopefully it finalized that footage and I didn't lose an hour of me answering questions. Thank you so much for hanging out. In the background you can see my look at, there it is, there's my drum kit, there's my drum kit, la 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 la, there's my wheel, which way, there's my, it's hard to point at things when you're looking this way. Is it that way? It's over that way, and that's down. There it is, my wheel. It's on like a TV dinner tray, it's very weird. Thanks for hanging out. And if you have any more questions, follow-up questions, put them in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you in June. Summertime. 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 Playing video games. Okay, goodbye.